Hello and a very warm welcome back to this edition of Oxwide. We're sorry it's been so long since the last episode, but we hope you haven't missed us too much. That doesn't mean that we haven't been out and about filming all the great things that are happening across the Trust. Quite the opposite, in fact, as you'll see today. And that brings us nicely on to our first film. A couple of weeks back, we took our cameras down to the Holiday Inn in Bexley and we covered the latest Oxley's Autism Champions Training Day. It was a great success and a really insightful event. Whilst we were there, I met Dr Khurram Sadiq, who's our new ADHD lead. We had a really interesting chat about ADHD and autism, and here's what he had to say. Can you explain exactly what ADHD is?
ADHD basically is, as the name implies, as the acronym says, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. People confuse it with ADD. ADD used to be a term which is Attention Deficit Disorder, used before 2013, before it all changed. So now there are three types of ADHDs. So you have got the inattentive type of ADHD, which the problems are concentration, organizing, distraction, poor memory. Then you have the hyperactive impulsive type, in which too much physical energy, they're interrupting, loud, impatient. And the third one is called the combined type, in which you've got everything, which is the most common type: inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity.
Is ADHD something that is different in everyone, or are there standard?
Again, it's different with in every single person. Like, you cannot get a classical picture. Very rarely you do get a classical picture. But again, it depends on the disruption in the pathways in the brain. The basis behind it is the dopamine and the norepinephrine is not secreted properly into the brain. So sometimes it's too high, sometimes it's too low. When it's high, it leads to hyperactivity, a lot of physical activity, and when it's low, it leads to procrastination, no motivation.
And you hear lots of people say that there never used to be as much ADHD diagnosis as there is. Is it because there is more ADHD now for certain reasons, or is it because we're better at recognising it?
I think probably we're better at recognizing it, and there could be some environmental changes which actually precipitate the advent of ADHD. For example, smoking in pregnancy, alcohol in pregnancy, preterm birth weight, that could actually lead to predisposition to ADHD. But more so, for example, a lot of patients that we see, they are between 30s and 40s, so they were not diagnosed when they were during their childhood, when they were with CAMS, because we didn't have much information about it. It used to be considered a very American diagnosis at one point, and then at one point it was considered that it ceased to exist miraculously after 18 years of age. So 18th birthday, it would completely disappear, fizzle out, and the person would be without ADHD. So autism and ADHD, they're two different conditions. Like I've recently done a TED talk on it, and I've named it when anarchy and order coexist. So anarchy is ADHD, order is autism spectrum disorder. There are a lot of similarities. People say that there are a lot of similarities between the symptoms, but the thing is, symptoms are the same, but the rationalization behind the symptoms are completely different. For example, I'll give you a couple of examples. In ADHD, they say people are inattentive. Yes, they're unable to hold their attention, they move from one thing to another. But in autism disorder, the spectrum disorder, they say they're inattentive. They're not inattentive, they're not interested. If they're not interested in something, they will not do it. You cannot push them to do something which is boring to them or which does not mean anything to them. So you have to differentiate between the two. Likewise, for example, in ADHD, they say they speak without thinking. And because they are impulsive, they cannot hold any conversation down or any thought process down, they have to bring it out. And most of the time, they're remorseful. In autism spectrum disorder, they do the same. But the rationalization is that they're saying something very factual and very matter of fact and to the point, and they're not remorseful about it because they say, it's right. And why? What's the fuss about? So the thing is, the symptoms are the same, saying things without thinking, but the rationalization between the two is completely different.
Is there any genetic evidence around?
It is a neurodevelopmental condition, so all the evidence at this moment, it is all genetic. So it runs in families, it is passed on to the families. It cannot appear just like that. If we are 17 or 18 years of age, there has to be a rationale. And so many times when I see people and they say, he was fine in primary, some slight problems in secondary. So that explains the transitions. When the structures are there and the problems are less complicated, they're able to hold their attention, but it slowly and gradually becomes more obvious with transition at a certain age.
And are some, particularly young people, are some of them mistaken for being poorly behaved when actually...
Oh yes, that's a massive stereotype, naughty and lazy. These are the two terminologies which are consistently used, still being used by schools. I'm amazed because they see a lot of children with ADHD and neurodevelopmental disorder, but unfortunately they cannot deploy their resources till they get a label. And for getting a label, it usually takes 2 to 3 years' time. That's what the waiting lists are. And probably by the time if they pick it up at, let's say, year 9, in 3 years' time, they're out of the school.
Is that what's referred to as being statemented? Is that how people refer to that? You need that before you can get the support?
Yes. Some schools are really good. They understand it and they will provide provisions even without getting a label, but they are few and far between.
Lovely. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Now in the studio, we've got a very special guest with us today, Carl, who's our COMAHD lead. So, first of all, welcome, Carl.
Thanks, Lisa.
Can you tell us exactly what COMAHD is? Because most of us probably haven't heard that.
Okay. So COMAHD's the term that we use now rather than dual diagnosis. So it stands for co-occurring mental health, alcohol and drugs. So we use that term for a number of reasons. One, it aligns with the government focus around acknowledging difficulties are co-occurring. And also because dual diagnosis can mean very different things to different groups of people. So within mental health, for example, yes, we accept and we acknowledge that means co-occurring mental health, alcohol and drugs, but you take that term dual diagnosis, perhaps colleagues in physical health or learning disabilities, and that can mean very different things. Also, in terms of when NHS England did the kind of scoping exercise with this, that was the term that people who had coexisting difficulties wanted to be known as. You know, they wanted an acknowledgement that their needs were co-occurring rather than being dual diagnosis. And, you know, I think if we think about the term dual, people automatically think about two things. So it moves away from that, us just thinking about there's two needs there, to acknowledging that our patient groups have, you know, a range of complexities.
Okay. And I know that tonight you're launching a carers group for COMAHD. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So tonight's our first COMAHD family and carers group. So we've been looking at perhaps some groups that were marginalised around sort of access to support. So the COMAHD Family Carers Group is an attempt to kind of sort of draw in those conversations to understand people's experiences and for us to learn as a trust from those experiences. It's an opportunity for those members to share those experiences they've had as well as the solutions as well. So we're really looking forward to that as a kind of rolling, opportunity there.
So, Carl, I know you work with a really interesting man called Jim Smith, who helps people with addiction through music and recovery through music. Yeah. And he came in a couple of weeks ago to record a special set for us, and we're going to premiere that now. So let's have a look.
I had 14 years of chronic addiction, really. It was pretty awful. I first went to a self-help group in 1969. I was 21 years old. I was hospitalised many, many times, a total of 3 years in a psychiatric hospital, with different various times of being hospitalised, sectioned 3 times. My mother died when I was 24. My father died when I was 25 years old. Things were just very despairing. I woke up in Orpington General. I'd been there before, but this time it was different. I had quite a profound experience.
What have I become?
sweetest friend. Everyone I know, they go away in the end. You can have it all, my empire of dirt. I will let you down, I will make you hurt. That's where really my recovery started. I went 2-3 weeks in detox and then 3 months in the group and then on to a halfway house run by the Richmond Fellowship in Purley. So that's where the music, I'd always loved music. My cousin emigrated to Canada when I was 14, left me an old guitar. I took to it. When I was 17, I'd met a professional musician. He was like a father figure. He tried to help me, and he got me a couple of auditions with well-known people of the time in the music business. But my addiction, even at that young age, was too severe, really, and I kind of drunk myself out of that situation. About 21 years ago, a friend of mine who was running a rehab in Redhill in Surrey said, "Jim, will you come over and play some songs for the patients?" And I was beginning to, I was playing these songs, to young people, and it was a real connecting point. And I realised it evoked really strong emotions in the young people. I was just becoming aware of the therapeutic power of music. Organically, I suppose, I just found myself sharing stories about my life in between the songs. And it seemed to work. And again, it evoked strong memories, sadness and happiness. And of course, I left them happy. And if I could start again, 1,000,000 miles away, I would keep myself, I would find a way.
That was a really touching performance from Jim. And he's a recovery musician. How did you first meet him?
So Jim was introduced to me through a mutual acquaintance. A guy who was doing some lived experience recovery work for us. Met, had coffee, and started talking about his journey. So Jim's 40 years in recovery, and as the film sort of outlines, started using music to connect with people in lots of different spheres, lots of different environments, mental health locations, addiction centres. So it said to us, would we be interested in having him come in, perhaps do some performances for the Trust? So yeah, we had him come in and with some of our community locations and start coming in, connecting with patients and with the staff. Felt this was really, if we want to connect with people around addiction and those kind of conversations, visual materials are great. Music, very powerful, very evocative, big, strong connection with people. So, yes, coming to some of our locations, certainly up for connecting with more of our services as well. So if anyone has any opportunities that they'd like Jim to come in and join, we'd be really happy to support that.
That was what I was going to say to you next. Obviously Jim's story will resonate with a lot of people. How can we get in touch with him if we wanted him to come and share his story with us? Yeah,
so colleagues can drop me a line, just drop me an email, and we can arrange that. Be really keen to see Jim doing some more performances for us.
Thanks for joining us. It'd be great to see you again on Oxwide soon.
Thank you, Lisa.
Along with Jim, hopefully.
Along with Jim, thank you.
You may have recently seen the fantastic news about our forensic services being rated outstanding by the CQC. To celebrate, the service held a special lunch at the Bracton Centre earlier this week. And with the promise of there being cake available, we had to bring our cameras over there to join the festivities. Whilst we were there, I spoke to some of the delighted team. Let's see what happened. First of all, congratulations to you both and your team on your outstanding rating.
Thank you very much.
It really is quite incredible. And I'd like to ask you, first of all, what you think the secret to your success has been?
Well, I would like to say that there's a lot to do with the teamwork, the communication, the fact that we are actually able to speak to each other, just say it just the way it is, so that if there are issues, you deal with it, and it's been consistent.
I think the secret to CQC is not one thing, but a combination of things. The first thing is that the service needs to work in a way that's not for CQC, but for the patients. So ensuring that your service provides excellent care every day and not for CQC.
The secret to success for CQC is not worrying about it. It's doing quality care day in and day out. I always tell people, don't worry about the inspectors. What you need to do, come to work, do your job, give 100%, make sure you follow all the policies, procedures, and take care of the patients, listen to them, engage them, because it's about the quality of care that we provide, making sure that we have great patient experience, and making sure that we have great outcomes. And if we just do that, CQC takes care of itself. But if you're always talking about worrying and we're doing it because of CQC, that's not the reason we do it. We do it because we care and it's the right thing to do.
I think it's really about patient engagement. I mean, we're all very passionate about what we do. It's about mutual respect for people that we're looking after and about, generally being with people and spending time with people, getting to know them. I think, that dynamic with being with people and showing them, it's about empathy.
CQC, the first thing they really picked up on was about warmth. So they talked a lot about the warmth of the relationships that we have here, how well we know our patients, and just how open we were. So they picked up that people to come and introduce themselves to the inspectors were forthcoming, and I think that made all the difference to us.
We have such a wonderful team here at the Bracton Centre. Profession doesn't come into it, job title or status doesn't come into it. No matter who you are, you're a part of the team and you're valued, and I absolutely just think it's wonderful because it just shows how much of a collective we are and we all care about each other as well.
So how did you feel when you heard about the rating, that you'd been rated outstanding?
Oh, I was so excited. I actually jumped off. I was so excited because this is the first time that we will get outstanding. So you know what? I'm so happy. Happy for the trust, happy for the service, the directorate is so exciting. The service users, they love it as well because they were all involved with this, and the carers as well. So yes, I'm over the moon, very happy.
We should be ready for CQC every day, 365 days of the year, not just about when we think they're going to come, because they could come anytime. And so we should always be prepared. And I think this outstanding represents that. It shows that we didn't do it just because CQC is coming. We did it because it's what we do every day, day in and day out. And the thing for me, as an employee of this trust, we don't pay people to do mediocre. Anyone can do mediocre. We pay people because we expect people to rise to the highest standards to deliver the best possible care for our patients.
And finally, last Friday was International Nurses Day, which was celebrated right across Oxleas in spectacular style. District Nurse Jayne Brownhill dropped by to tell us why she loves being a nurse.
My name is Jane. I'm a District Nurse Team Lead. Along with my partner Steve, I am a mum to 4 beautiful daughters. I have 4 cats and a Chihuahua cross called Floyd. I always knew I wanted to be a nurse. Right from the age of 3, I still remember telling my parents that was what I was going to be. I began my training at Canterbury University at age 18. I qualified in 1994 and started my career in an elderly medicine ward at Medway Hospital. From there, I went to work at Queen Mary's Hospital on a gastroenterology diabetes ward. I decided that I wanted to progress in district nursing and was successful in securing a place at university to complete my degree and qualified as a district nurse in 2015. Working as a district nurse can be rewarding and satisfactory despite the long hours and difficult decision making, especially as the role can feel solitary due to its lone working nature. Our values and beliefs which drive the role allows nursing people at home where they want to be as the heart of community nursing. My role as a district nurse involves being preventative, supportive and practical. It can also be highly technical, risk-taking and intensive. My day involves lots of communication which I love, and the interaction with patients, relatives, carers and staff enables the excellent care to be given to our community patients. Seeing this take place makes me feel proud to be a district nurse daily. I am also a professional nurse advocate, a PNA. Being a PNA means supporting wellbeing, learning and clinical work, as well as aiding in professional and personal development for staff. There are so many options to use your skills in a nursing career, and I would advocate for nurses everywhere.
And that's it for our comeback episode of Oxwide. We promise we won't leave it as long for the next edition. So until then, goodbye.